A troubled teenager from Camano Island attracted the attention of the country in 2007. He avoided capture by engaging in a daring sequence of adventures, utilizing stolen boats, planes, and cars. This is the story of Colton Harris Moore, a teenager who gained notoriety as the Barefoot Bandit. He was known for his fondness for committing crimes while barefoot. Colton Harris Moore was born on March 22, 1991, to parents Pamela Kohler and Gordon Moore. When Colton was a young child, his father, who apparently suffered from drug and alcohol abuse, abandoned the family, giving Kohler exclusive custody. She brought up her son in a rundown single-wide trailer on Camano Island, where they battled to make ends meet. Colton showed signs of behavioral problems at a young age. He started escaping home frequently, hiding in the surrounding woodlands for prolonged periods. In order to survive, he resorted to breaking into holiday homes and robbing them of food and other camping essentials. His first conviction came at the age of 12, where he was found guilty of stealing. A year later, after receiving additional convictions, he started serving time in juvenile correctional facilities. Harris Moore, who was no longer bound to the public school system, proceeded to break the law. On July 14, 2006, a warrant for his arrest was issued after he skipped a mandated court date. Harris Moore fled after finding that he was now wanted by the police. He continued his habit of breaking into homes to steal food and supplies, setting up covert camps deep in the Camano Island forest. He also started using the computers in some of the houses he stole into to teach himself how to steal identities. Under the homeowner's name, he would order credit cards, which he would then use to buy food and high-tech survival gear like night vision goggles that helped him evade capture by the police. On February 9, 2007, Harris Moore was eventually found and taken into custody. He was now facing 23 criminal accusations, the majority of which were related to residential burglaries. He struck a plea agreement with the prosecutors and admitted guilt to 3 of the offenses. As a result, he received a 3-year term at Chehalis's Green Hill School, a high-security juvenile prison center. After demonstrating the qualities of a model inmate at Green Hill School, Harris Moore was sent to the Griffin House Residential Treatment Center on February 14, 2008. 2 months later, he escaped Griffin House through an unlocked window, and a felony arrest warrant was issued for him. Harris Moore stole a car and drove back to Camano Island, where he continued his pattern of breaking and entering to steal food and other items. This time, local authorities launched an active search for his capture since they were more prepared. News articles about this mysterious teenager soon started to appear when the local media took notice. On July 18, 2008, sheriff's deputies on Camano Island gave chase to a black Mercedes that had been seen driving recklessly. The driver of the Mercedes abruptly leaped out and fled into the bushes as the police cars drew in. A number of stolen credit cards, cell phones, and a digital camera that the driver had used to snap several selfies were discovered by police when they examined the Mercedes. The images on the camera were easily confirmed to be Harris Moore's. In one of the images that Harris Moore shot of himself, he is shown lying on his back in the middle of a forest and staring straight up at the camera. By this point, the 17-year-old teenager had developed a memorable nickname as a result of his propensity for committing crimes while barefoot. He had taken on the nickname of the Barefoot Bandit. Due to the legal wrangling, Harris Moore decided to flee Camano Island and relocate to Orcas Island on a stolen boat. Shortly after his arrival, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office began receiving an increasing number of burglary reports, causing widespread concern throughout the small island community. The situation had deteriorated to the point where the Orcas Island Chamber of Commerce called a special meeting on October 2008 to address the sudden rash of sophisticated break-ins. Police increased their efforts to capture the perpetrator, who was now strongly suspected to be Colton Harris Moore. On November 12, 2008, Harris Moore stole a Cessna from a hangar in order to get away from the police dragnet that had been set up for him on Orcas Island. He managed to safely take off from the island and go 300 miles to the east before making a crash landing on the Yakima Indian Reservation. He was able to flee before the police could arrive. Footprints were found inside the cockpit during the police search, identifying Harris Moore as the most likely culprit. Colton Harris Moore is thought to have learned how to fly by studying aircraft manuals, viewing instructional DVDs, and spending numerous hours on Microsoft Flight Simulator. Harris Moore continued to steal vehicles and roam around, visiting locations including Reno, Sacramento, and Eastern Washington. When Harris Moore returned to Camano Island in May 2009, he started playing cat and mouse once more with the Island County Sheriff's Office. One morning, he broke into a patrol car that was parked in front of a deputy's home and stole police gear, including a cell phone, a police rifle, and a supply of ammunition. In response, the sheriff's office increased their efforts to apprehend the young outlaw. At this point, Harris Moore, who was now 18 years old, was acting in a very deliberate, cautious, and meticulous manner. He consistently outran law enforcement by a wide margin. On September 11, 2009, he stole a Cirrus SR-22 aircraft from the San Juan Island Municipal Airfield. He flew it to Orcas Island, where he made a runway landing on the public airport. He then stole a boat and headed to Point Roberts. On September 29, 2009, he broke into a hangar in Bonners Ferry and stole a Cessna, his third stolen plane. He was able to fly 260 miles to the west before the plane ran out of fuel, forcing a crash landing close to Granite Falls. By this point, he was the main suspect in almost 100 thefts that occurred in Washington, Idaho, and Canada. The majority of these included speedboats, vehicles, and airplanes. Despite the numerous charges against him, he seized a second Cirrus SR-22 from the Anacortes Airport and flew it to Orcas Island. The next day, he broke into a grocery store in the neighborhood and made off with more than $1,000 in cash. He sketched out a path of cartoonish-looking feet that snaked up and down the aisles of the store, living up to his nickname. In June 2010, Harris Moore escaped the tense police situation in Washington and drove a string of stolen cars across the country, making it as far east as Illinois. A Cessna was reported stolen from a Bloomington, Indiana airport on July 4, 2010, and as was immediately suspected, Harris Moore was responsible. Due to the absence of extradition agreements between Cuba and the U.S. government, Cuba was his planned destination. Harris Moore successfully navigated his aircraft to the Bahamas, where he was forced to make an emergency landing close to Great Abaco Island. Following the rough landing, he made his way to a local fishing community, where he survived by stealing food from nearby stores. Colton Harris Moore was apprehended in the Bahamas on July 11, 2010. The infamous fugitive drove a stolen boat onto a sandbar and became stuck not far from shore. Locals provided a number of leads that allowed the Bahamian police to close in on the suspect. The cops ordered him to put his hands in the air and, not taking any chances, shot out the boat's engine. On January 27, 2012, Colton Harris Moore received a 6-year jail term. Upon his release from prison on September 2, 2016, the 25-year-old was placed on probation.